so nice to see you. So to start us off, throughout the events of the film, your character Claire is really the only one who has a really understanding of what's going on. She's very intelligent. How would you describe her in your own words?
Yeah, you're totally right. She's the only one that actually has any information about what is happening. What I really love about her as well is that all the other characters are kind of, elite police officers. And so they're very smooth, they're very well trained. Claire isn't. She's a street cat. She's rough and ready. She's a bit messy. She's a bit instinctual. She doesn't like being told what to do. And she's there to deliver a message to her brother because she's kind of the only one that's realized that something really isn't right with this town.
Now, this is a new installment in a very iconic series of films. How do you think the version that you guys have created differs from previous installments?
Yeah, we wanted to do something slightly different in that we were basically an origin story was set in the 90s. It's been 25 years since the games came out, so there's a huge fan base there that clearly still love the narrative and want to explore more. And what we wanted to do was really try and translate the first and second games onto the big screen and root that in a kind of survival horror movie. We're really scary and dark, and we're out to frighten you.
There's so many twists and turns in this film. It's really on the edge of your seat. What do you hope that viewers take away from this film? How do you want them to react to it? What do you think their favorite thing is going to be?
Yeah, I really hope it's an experience for them, and I think it's something that should be seen on the big screen. I love going to the movies, whether it be a horror or a comedy, where you're kind of sharing that emotion with everyone else in the room, and hopefully this will deliver that. I think there's nothing quite like being scared shitless with 50 strangers.
The cinematography in this film is absolutely brilliant. What stood out to me was that scene where Claire's in the truck with that trucker. You see this like gore and these intense sound effects. What was that filming process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie was pretty intense. We shot completely at night. So we spent 3 months without seeing daylight. And it was really, really cold. We're in Canada in the winter. And so we were all a little bit on edge. And I think that really helped kind of translate the energy of the characters through the movie. But it was a lot of fun to especially those scenes that are so reminiscent of the games, to actually step into them and be in that environment that you recognize instantly, is a real gift to an actor, because a lot of time all of that is done with CGI, but we had a lot of practical sets to play in.
That's always such a unique aspect of films that I really, really love. Now, the progression of Claire's character throughout the film, when we meet her as a child and she first meets Lisa, and then that constant in the film where she just constantly is seeing these things, she progresses a lot and she grows a lot. How do you think that the version of Claire that we meet in the beginning and the version that she is in the end differs based on the events of the film?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she really does go on a journey, and even from when she first meets her brother, there's a lot of tension there. It isn't a big kind of, loving reunion. They clearly have some history and some tension and some trauma, and Claire has to kind of work through that at the same time as killing a bunch of zombies. So it's almost like a really intense therapy session over the course of one night. But by the end, she's a completely different person, I think, and she's become at peace with her hometown, something that she struggled with for a long time.
That's one of the things that I loved about the film. You have all this gore and this violence and these zombies and people being, decapitated and all that stuff, but you also have a lot of heavy emotional aspects to it, which I think kind of really keeps you on the edge there because it creates so many different feelings throughout the film. When people watch it, what do you hope they take away?
Yeah, I really hope the takeaway that we've tried to build quite a rounded character in Claire, that she does. We meet her as a child and we witness the kind of trauma that she's been through, and we see her come back to face it. And I think there's something quite powerful in that. And it does kind of carry us through to the movie as her emotional journey, as well as the physical stuff. And I hope that they enjoy that, and that lends itself to the tone overall of this movie compared to past incarnations.
Absolutely. Now, what's your favorite thing about this film? I know it's probably hard to choose.
My favorite thing is knowing that I'm getting to play a character that is loved by so many people. I think that's really, really cool. Our job as actors is to embody a character and make a movie so that people can then watch it and enjoy it. And it's really amazing when you know that there already is a built-in fan base. There already are people that are excited for it and excited for you. It's part of the kind of cinematic experience that I fell in love with as a child. So I think it's a real honor to get to deliver that for other people.
Kaya, it is impossible not to fall in love with you on screen. I'm so excited for everyone to see this film. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan. Have a lovely day.
You too. Bye. My name is Sydney Hargrove and I'm with the Nocturnal. How are you guys today?
Very
Doing
good. How are
great.
you?
Good, I'm glad to hear it. So, Avan, we meet your character, Leon. He's a rookie for the Raccoon City Police Department. His past is sort of poked at, but we really don't hear much about him. What is your own interpretation of Leon's story? Who is he in your eyes?
Leon, I mean, I've clocked like 100 hours or 200 hours of playing Resident Evil 4. So I played a lot of Leon before I played Leon as a character. Yeah, I think that he's got this. He's having a really bad first day. He's somebody who is sort of wandering, not exactly sure. I don't think he's exactly sure what he's doing with his life, and he's been sent off to this sort of small town middle of nowhere place. So he's not the most excited to be there. Yeah, and I think that like he tries his best to adapt to the scenario as it unfolds around him, and I think that grows him as a person, and he becomes more the Leon that I think maybe is represented in the games. But we Johannes was really wanted to have this sort of growth for the character.
I really see that progressing in the way you play him, which I have so much respect for. Now, Tom, your character Albert gains insight onto what's going on in the film before any of the other characters do. This creates a really intense performance for you. What about the process did you find to be most challenging?
I think really to play that fine line between being very respectful of the character from the game and wanting to use that as influence, but then also making this guy real, making him really relatable, because I think one thing that's missing from the character in the game is that we don't really get to see who he really is, who the human is behind this guy. So for me, finding that balance and talking to Johannes and getting guidance from him, as well as like bringing my own thing to the table, of finding who he really is, and having those friendships be developed. So when that betrayal happens, that actually means something. It matters, and it matters to an audience, and I feel like it should be something that it should be expected necessarily.
I love that interpretation. Now, for both of you, what was that process like for each of you individually, developing a character that was originally created in a game and bringing them onto screen?
A lot of playing video games. Not bad research.
Yeah, that's basically it. You have to like really go into delve into the research, and I think as well, like find out because we're making this for the fans, right? So for me, it was very important to go and look into fandoms and stuff and see what it is about that character that people love so much and why they're so iconic, and then also what it is about the tone, and what is it about going back to look at those original games and see what it was so special about them. All of that feeds into having that care on set when you're making the movie of making sure you're giving it your best.
Now, Avan, did you find any pressure with bringing this character that previously existed in a different realm onto the screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I shared the pressure with basically everybody else on the cast who's playing these sort of iconic characters that are well known and well loved, and so but I think that like Tom said previously, you got you got to put all that aside and tell a story, and the story that Johannes has laid out, and try to honor what's in the script and what's in the text, and so yeah, as far as extra pressure, I don't think I felt any. I mean, he's a beloved character, and obviously a character that I really really love. So, but I mean, it's mostly about just respecting how much I love the character, as a person, and working within that.
What's your favorite thing about Leon?
I think what I like about Leon the most is he's I don't know why everyone thinks that he's not funny, because I think he is funny. In 4, he's really funny. He's sort of like put upon and exhausted about like having to take care of the president's daughter, and she's getting kidnapped, and he's like and it's almost like a little bit like he does have these sort of like American action hero moments, especially in 4, where he's like, it's sort of this sort of almost like pulled out of a 1980s actioner sort of lines that are quite fun. But yeah, I just love that game. I also just love the world of Resident Evil 4. It's like That was my favorite thing of like, the sort of like small European town and the monks and it's sort of a fun world.
You guys both do such an incredible job to capture that. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So Robbie, we first meet your character Chris when he's incredibly young. How do you think he evolves into the character that you play throughout the course of the film?
I think it's nice to see the young version of Chris and Claire because you get to see some of the mistakes that they make and what turns Chris into this guy who obviously has some regrets about how he handled things with his sister and he was a small town hero, but now he's stuck in this small town that is falling apart and doesn't have a great relationship with the people that he stayed in the town with, and he doesn't have a relationship with his sister who left. So there's a little theme of like coming to terms with decisions you make as a kid in this movie, and I think that it humanizes Chris a little bit compared to the video game version, and it's nice to be able to go from that point to build back this relationship and come to terms with mistakes that were made and reconcile with Claire.
Now, what's so interesting about a film like this is that you guys get to breathe life into, like you were saying, characters that are sort of two-dimensional on a video game screen. You get to bring them stories and you get to give them these personalities in this life. How would you say that your version of Chris differs from the video game version, and what was your process like in adapting him?
I felt very comfortable just in the video game version of Chris because I've spent so many hours playing as him in the games, and luckily I just look like the human being version of the video game. And then speaking with Johannes and really just talking to him about the script and hearing how passionate and how knowledgeable he is of the games, we just geeked out and talked about what he wanted to bring over and Easter eggs and all these things. And I just felt very confident and comfortable in the version that was on the page. This is a guy who has all of the traits of the video game version, but he's more of a complete human being and somebody who's more relatable and somebody that people can see a reflection of themselves in. And then I knew that, the zombie killing Chris Redfield was going to show up at some point. So, I always knew we would get there.
Now, there's this element of delusion that Chris carries up until a certain point in the film. Where do you think this came from?
I think it's a little bit of he's stuck and he doesn't know what to do. Like, it's easy to say, well, he could just leave, but he doesn't have anybody anywhere else. So it's not that easy, talking about starting a whole new life somewhere else is a lot easier than up and doing it. So I think this is a guy who is just at a little bit of a crossroads in his life, and he wants things to be better than they are. And I think he pretends that things are better than they are, but he knows that they aren't. And that's where he gets to throughout the course of this movie.
I think that that's something that a lot of viewers can relate to, and it's strange to find relation in a series like Resident Evil, but that's, where you get that narrative of breathing life into these characters. What do you want viewers to take away from these human situations?
Thank you. I think that's really important. If the movie can look exactly like the games, but it doesn't matter unless you care about these characters. And I think Johannes did a really good job of taking these iconic, beloved characters and just making them more relatable and giving them human flaws and human problems. And those are the things that people can relate to and see in them and watch them work through. And, without that, you could adapt all the cutscenes you want, but at the end of the day, people aren't going to care.
Truly, I totally understand that. Now, at a certain point, we witness this complete change in Chris. He sort of does a 180, that delusion kind of disappears. Was it challenging to go about this transformation within your character? What was that process like for you?
No, because I think the nice thing about it is, you can tell that he's not fully behind what he's saying at the beginning of the movie. It's just a little bit of like, he knows something's going on, but at the same time, he's not willing to, just have Claire come in out of nowhere and dictate all of these things. And she sounds a little crazy too. So, there's no way he can know that there's zombies roaming around the city. But, if anything's going to make somebody take a 180, it's going to be fighting for their life and losing friends and dealing with a zombie apocalypse. So I kind of buy that 180, and it wasn't too hard to wrap my head around.
Well, hi, Johannes. How are you?
Hello, Sydney. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So to start us off, all of your characters are obviously adapted from a video game. What is that process like in creating this new world on screen? Where do you start?
Yeah, it's tricky. You want to draw from the games as much as possible, but you don't just want to put on screen walking, talking props that are just sort of spouting exposition. And cinema, the difference between a game and cinema is the emotion. I think that real human beings sort of imbue their characters, and so it was really about taking the characters from the game, but really giving them some depth and some heart.
I absolutely loved the cinematography in this film. I feel like it added so much depth, especially with the orphanage and the trucker scene. There are so many things that are so beautifully intense. Where did you pull inspiration from for this type of design?
Initially, very much from the games, particularly with the second game, the reboot of the second game was a huge influence on how we shot the movie. I felt that was so cinematic, and drenched in rain and just dark and creepy and shot a lot of flashlights just lighting the scenery. And then I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, so I drew a lot cinematically from that, and I'm a huge fan of 70s cinema in general. So I would go back to movies like The Exorcist and really look at The Shining. I loved even Carrie, and sort of look at these movies and use some of the styles from those movies and put them on screen.
Now that you say that, I see a lot of connections, which I absolutely love. Now, this is a series that is obviously very loved. There's a massive fan base here. What about the new installment of the Resident Evil series are you most excited for viewers to see?
Yeah, I can't wait for people to watch this. I think I'd love to sit with an audience and just watch them scream and watch them laugh as well, because I think it has a very dry sense of humor. It's not sort of it just has this like humor in it that I think people will find very different for a Resident Evil movie. And then also, yeah, like I say, I hope that it scares the hell out of people, and I really will enjoy watching that and watching people hide behind their hands.
Definitely. It is very funny, which I absolutely adored about it. Now, which character do you think is most similar and most different to the video game? Who do you think's really evolved?
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely, Claire is very closely rooted to the game, but she's her own thing. But yeah, she's tough, and she's obviously visually looks very similar to Claire from the game. So she really came straight out of the second game. I was playing the second game very much at the time, and Leon obviously visually looks very different to the Leon in the games. But I can't wait for people to watch the movie, because he was my way into the movie when telling the story. Is as a scriptwriter, like I saw it through his eyes, and he has this humor and sort of disheveled self-deprecation, and I think he is very much, he embodies Leon, but in a way that I think is very new and fresh.
Avan captures that so well. Now, as most of these films do, this one ended on a bit of an ambiguous, interpretable, open ending. What do you think is up next for these characters in your own words?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of fun to be had. I would hope that we stick close to the games. going forward. You know, there was so much fun, you know, looking at the first and second game, and I would love to, you know, look at the third and the fourth game and maybe Code Veronica and use them as inspiration going forward. But yeah, there's such a rich tapestry in the Resident Evil lore that I sort of excited to see. You know, I can't wait. I hope we do go and do more Resident Evil.
I very much thank you, Will. Johannes, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This film was brilliant. I'm so excited for people to watch it.
Thank you. It's lovely chatting.
Have a good one. So nice chatting. Bye,
Okay,
guys. Thank you
bye.
so much.